Hi, my name is Vinny Sansalone, and this is my screencast for my ePortfolio of my Weebly website. I'm going to try and get through all this information fairly quickly because the screencast tool I have is only a 15-minute time limit max, and I have quite a bit of information on here because I had to create this entire website in the fall, this past fall semester, for my health SCE, which was run or taught by Dr. Canfield Simbro. And by having that class, I believe it was very useful to have for this past semester and especially this educational technology summer course. So let's go ahead and start out. First, this is the first page I have, which is my title page, and I got a picture of, it says "Do It for Life," and I believe this promotes healthy eating and exercising more. And I hope after you view the screencast, it provides you with some helpful information. And it helps you to get to know me a little bit better. So let's start out. I am currently a senior now at the University of Mount Union. I'm a double major in PE and health with a multi-age education minor. I played baseball freshman and sophomore year, but now I'm focusing all my attention on school. I'm currently a member of SHAPE and OFERD, and I was able to attend the SHAPE conference in 2014 and 2015 at Kalahari with Dr. Peets. And this just continues to explain how when Dr. Peets and Dr. Canfield Simbro have like events like Family Fit and Fun Days, I'll volunteer to go help out, and I just talk about helping out with that and how interacting with the kids allows us to get to see how they function, so we can have a better understanding of how to like talk to kids and be able to be a better teacher by the time we are in a classroom teaching and that sort of thing. And I really enjoy doing all that, and it's fun to see how the kids run around with all their energy. Contact information, I have my 2 emails on here, and including my Mount Union one. I created this top one because Dr. Canfield said my original one, which was my actual one I use for my personal self, is Vin95 Tribe, and she said I needed something a bit more professional. So I decided to create this one, and I thought that was probably a good idea. And I don't have my phone number or anything on here because I don't want to be sent any like random spam phone calls or anything like that, at least not at this point in my life. And then I have a picture of my family on here, so this page wasn't blank, and just to show you like my family as well. Standards, health and PE. Here I just share some health and PE the Ohio Department of Education's PE standards 1 through 6, and the National Health Education Standards 1 through 8. And then I have an example of an elementary PE unit plan I created for one of Dr. Peets' classes, and this contains a whole unit, an entire unit plan, the description, the standards involved, each domain talked about, a day-by-day description, talk about the safety requirements and all this differentiated instruction. So I don't really have time to talk about all that, but I would suggest just going ahead and look at it, and I even provide a bunch of assessment tools as well. And then I also have an example of a comprehensive school physical activity program that we did in another one of Dr. Peets' classes, and this just also known as CSPAP, and this, I believe I did this sophomore year, first semester of sophomore year, and this contains a whole bunch of information of how I would set up a coordinated school physical activity program. So I think this was pretty neat to do, so I would suggest taking a look at that as well if you have time. And then I give an example of the National Health Education Standards 1 through 8. I'm not going to read them all because I don't need to, and be a little redundant. And then at the bottom here, I give examples, like this one, I give examples for standards 1, 2, 3, and 8. This is just an example of how I would use this, how I would teach a lesson that incorporates all of those standards, and I do the same thing for these 2 other ones as well. And then some additional resources. These are a bunch of websites for PE and health education teachers as well as coaches. They're very useful, and I reference them quite often throughout both PE and health classes, as well as my education classes as well. And then this one, I talk about technology incorporation and why we should involve technology into our classroom. I actually didn't remember that this was in here until after we just did our research papers, but I think I was pretty much on the same point and as I was for this class. And then I also have an example at the bottom of how I did a EdTPA lesson plan on how technology may affect your health. And I actually, if you have time, go ahead and take a look at that as well, because I thought that was one of the more useful lessons that I taught, and it was very informative for all the students and everything, and even myself when I was researching everything. I also provide my own personal teaching philosophy. I had to do this assignment for one of Dr. Canfield's classes my freshman year, and then this past semester Dr. Schneller had us redo it, or had us create our own teaching philosophy, so I went ahead and updated it a little bit more since I had a couple years to process everything. So I just give my views on my personal teaching philosophy, and I would suggest just reading it, because after you read this, I think you'll get to know me a little bit better and how I want to be as a teacher. So go ahead and take a look at that as well, because I don't think I should read it, since there's a link right here that you could hit. So, and I provided a couple pictures in there as well, just so it's not a plain black and white text. So next slide. Then after you get it to look at my teaching philosophy, I have a coaching one, but sorry about that, it glitched a little bit. So I have something about coaching, which after I become a teacher, I want to become a coach as well, and just share some of my experience. I've helped with baseball camps in my town where I live, Ontario, Ohio. Worked at the baseball camps for Mount Union freshman and sophomore year. Played 4 years at my high school, and then 2 years here, and I've played since I was 9 years old, so I think that'll help when I want to get a coaching job. And then I have a couple examples of some example lesson plans, and this one, the outline for death and dying, this is the EdTPA format I did, and this was actually the first lesson I had to teach at Marlington. And after talking to Dr. Canfield, I don't think I could have had a more odd subject to do my first lesson on. So she just told me, she goes, well, at least you got the weirdest one out of the way, and nothing can get any weirder. So I thought it was weird that I started out with the most controversial or weird kind of topics, but it worked out in the end because it made me feel more comfortable teaching all my other lessons. Then this third grade summer safety lesson was one that my entire class did. My health class, taught by Dr. Canfield as well, we did last year. We went into her daughter's school and taught her class about summer safety right before school ended. And then I have another one I did for my SCE as well, and it was a EdTPA about HIV. And I'm not going to open all of these, because I keep having glitches on here, but I would suggest go ahead and opening the files just to have a look at them, because I think they're very informative and contain a lot of useful information. And then next one, talk about current and future health education necessities. So I just talked about how I believe, my personal opinions, how sex ed should be a requirement in the schools and that sort of thing. Basically, this was my own personal views, and I believe I had to do this for a class as well. So, and I talk about some of my experiences in the class and why I believe these types of things. And then I gave a couple examples, or a couple YouTube videos to watch about, this is just some stuff I believe that should be taught in health class, such as teaching about STIs, pregnancy, sex health, sexual education, and also talking about death and dying, even though it's kind of controversial and that sort of thing. But I relate it all back to my own personal opinions, sort of. And then I also have why is it necessary to teach health literacy, and I just talk about why I did that. I actually had to do this assignment for Dr. Schaefer's health class I was in, which was health literacy, and I just talk about why it's important, because people need to know how to take the right prescription medication. Even though it doesn't sound very complicated, some people don't know how to take the right amount of pills and that sort of thing. And then I also talk about, I go more into health literacy and why it's important, why it's even more important as well. So I would suggest taking a look at this as well. And then I have a smog analysis, which smog means simple measure of gobbledygook, readability formula. And we went over this in Dr. Schaefer's health literacy classes, because when I first heard this, I thought it was like a joke, but it's very helpful to use, and it helps everyone to be able, it helps you to communicate to parents and everyone else the point you're trying to get across. That way everyone's able to understand it. And I actually have an example at the bottom of something that you could use for a pamphlet or something if you want to send home to students. And then I have a readability score example down here, and then I also have the readability formula so you can see what your score is, because I believe the average American reading level was a 7th or 8th grade reading level, which is kind of terrible, but knowing how to use these is very helpful. I also talk about parent-child relationships and how parents can spend more time with their children and get to know their kids a little bit more, even though nowadays a lot of people are working more and they don't really have time to talk to their kids or do anything because they're always working. It just gives some examples of how they could spend more time with their families. I also talk about socioeconomic status and how it affects the obesity rates and that sort of thing, which it is really important. It's a really big factor of how it's affecting the obesity rate, which this is a huge problem in today's world. The next one I have is my resume. Dr. Canfield Simbro also had us do a resume I don't really remember why, but she just wanted us to make sure that the people in my class knew how to do a resume, and she had us go to the Career Center in HPCC to make sure we had everything correct. And I have an example here of my resume containing, I believe, everything other than my phone number, which I thought this was really helpful to use, and I just keep using this resume file I have and just continue to update it whenever I can add on to it. So I would click that as well, just for an example, if you need an example of a resume. Then the last two things I have are from two different classes. Last semester I had to take EDU 150 with Dr. Schneller, and he had us do a bunch of blog posts. And you click on that one on the EDU 150 blog I have, it just shares everything that I did from my observations. It gives I give different topics and what my experience was in the class and that kind of thing. Then the very last page I have on here is our EDU 218 blog post, which you've already seen before, and I talk about copyright issues in education, AUPs, and cyberbullying, and just discuss my experiences with that. And that's my entire Eportfolio. And sorry about all the glitches because it kept freezing on me and I had to go back and pause it, but thank you for listening.